This is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in the new expansion to Fantasy Realms. I've already combined it with my core box. It does fit in the core box, so I don't have the box top to show you, but this is a game that I truly love, enough that it inspired a game of mine called Red Rising. The core aspect in Fantasy Realms is that you are building your hand, you're crafting your hand. You start out with a random hand of cards, and over the course of the game, you are getting rid of those cards and adding new cards to your hand, so you score a bunch of points, hopefully, at the end of the game. I'm going to share the three new factions in the game, the three new suits of cards, and then talk a little bit about the cursed items in the game, which have some really cool mechanisms in them. So one of the new factions are the Undead. The Undead, their specialty is that they look for cards in the discard area. So in Fantasy Realms, typically on your turn, you are taking a card from her hand. You're gaining a card from either the discard area or the deck, and then you are discarding a card to this discard area. And so you have a fair amount of control over at least what you are putting in the discard area. You don't control whether or not other players pick up that card or not. And so these cards, so for example, like the Death Knight. The Death Knight says you get plus 7 points for each weapon and army in the discard area. So if you see a bunch of weapons and or armies accumulating in the discard area, you might try to keep the Death Knight in your hand, and you also might try to add additional weapons and armies to the discard area. This is a really fun faction to play. I like that it's fairly tough to play because you can't exactly control what's in the discard area, but it is neat to go after, and it can result in quite a few points. The next type of card are buildings. So buildings are a little similar to lands in the original game. In fact, I think one of the cards was pulled from land into building. There's some like replacement cards in this game, in this expansion. But the buildings, they do a couple different things. A couple of them say something like the dungeon. So the dungeon says 10 points for each for the first undead, beast, and artifact. So if you have an undead, a beast, and an artifact in your hand, that would be worth 30 additional points. And then it says plus 5 for each additional card in any of these suits and a few other cards. It names a few other cards that thematically fit with a dungeon. There are a few building cards that do that. The Chapel, I had this one in one of the games that I played. This was fun. Plus 40 points, which is a lot of points, if you have exactly 2 cards from among these suits. Leader, Wizard, Outsider, and Undead. And so I had to try to get 2 cards total from all those suits in my hand, no more, no less, to get those additional 40 points. And then the Crypt says the sum of all base strength of all undead, which is similar to the Warlord in the core game, but referring to the undead instead of armies. So you look at the base strength. If I had these cards in hand, then I would get 14 plus, 10 plus 8, thanks to the Crypt. That's cool as well. All really cool abilities here. And last, I think my favorite faction are the Outsiders. The Outsiders are it's almost like the designer, Bruce, came up with a couple new factions, but didn't want to pursue, not necessarily didn't want to pursue, but wanted just different things, completely different abilities that aren't really connected to each other at all. And so they're outsiders, they're a little different. They're coming from all over the world to your kingdom. The genie here is negative 50 points, negative 50 base points. But the bonus is plus 10 points per other player, which could be worth quite a few if you have, or it could actually just get you back up to 0 for the genie. But then at the end of the game, look through the draw deck and put 1 card in your hand. So you get to find a card, any card you want in the deck, and add it to your hand at the end of the game, which can be very powerful. The Leprechaun is also fun. The Leprechaun is worth 20 points, and he says, at the end of the game, draw the top card of the deck and add it to your hand. So again, you get an additional card, but because of the penalties in Fantasy Realms, that could be not good for you, but it also could be very good. It's kind of luck of the Leprechaun here, which I think is a lot of fun. And the Judge, I had a lot of fun crafting around this card. The Judge is worth 11 points, and the bonus is plus 10 points for each card that contains a penalty that is not cleared, which I think is really, really cool, because a lot of the cards in this game have penalties. Like the Crypt here says, penalty, blanks all leaders, which means that any leader cards you have in your hand are just blank. It's as if nothing is on the card. And there are cards that could take away this penalty. However, the Judge wants penalties that aren't cleared. So if I had the Judge and I had the Crypt, what I would be trying to do is simply not have leaders in my hand. So this penalty isn't cleared. I still have this penalty, but I am not suffering from it. And then I'm getting plus 10 points because this penalty is in my hand. Just a lot of cool abilities with the Outsiders. Now, the other whole, so basically you can play with you can add these new cards to the expansion and just play that way, or you can also add the cursed items. I play both ways, and I like both ways. I think both are viable ways to play. The way the cursed items work is that every player has a random face-up cursed item, they have a vast variety of abilities. Most of the abilities are things that you can do on your turn in addition to the normal thing that you would do on your turn, which is gain a card, then discard a card. And typically, when you have those abilities, what you can do with these cards is you can activate their ability as well. So, for example, here, the Fish Hook. The Fish Hook actually has an ability that kind of replaces your turn. The Fish Hook says, draw 2 cards from the deck, then discard any 2 cards. So instead of just gaining 1 card, you're gaining 2 cards if you use the Fish Hook. Let's find another simple ability. Hourglass looks pretty cool. I didn't see this one. Hourglass, after your turn, take an extra turn. Do not replace this card with a new cursed item until your second turn. So you just get a bonus turn, which is really powerful, or can be really powerful at the right time. And that's the kind of the magic of these items. You can use them, and if you use them on almost every card, you'll get negative points at the end of the game. So if I use this Hourglass, I get -7 points, and I can no longer use that ability. I get to use it once per game, and then I must draw another cursed item card, and which I can use on a future turn if I want. So you could completely ignore these. You could not use these at all and not get any negative points, or you can use them as powerful one-time abilities on your turn but you will lose some points at the end of the game. Hopefully the net gain will be worth it. You can also at any time on your turn, you can simply discard your cursed item, and then at the end of your turn you draw a new one. So if you don't like your cursed item, you can just discard it, get another cursed item. I love the flexibility of these cards. I love that you can pay attention to them if you want to, or you can ignore them if you want to. If you don't like the card, you can get another one. You're not forced to do anything with them, and it's only one thing to pay attention to at a time. I think while I love progression in games where you're feeling more and more powerful, where when you do one thing, you get to combo it with different things, I like that in Fantasy Realms they kept it simple. You only have to pay attention to your cards in hand, the discard area, and one ability. And you're not accumulating a bunch of different abilities that you can use at any given time, because that can be pretty overwhelming. So I like how streamlined that is. Overall, I think this is a really, really clever way to add a little bit of asymmetry to a game, to give players one ability that they can use, but if they use that ability, they get a little penalty, and they can replace that ability at any time if they want to. Just really, really clever use of asymmetry in this game. So those are my favorite mechanisms, and some descriptions of the new factions in Fantasy Realms, the Cursed Hoard. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below as well. Thanks.